In this tutorial, I'm going to show you how to work with string values or text inside of Python. We're going to learn what and how to use dictionaries inside of Python. We're going to talk about escape characters and why they're so helpful. Then we're also going to deal with raw strings and why we need them. And I'm also going to show you how to include comments inside your script. I'll also show you how to work with string values, like indexing string values and slicing them, and how to manipulate the string values.
In this tutorial, we're going to be working with strings or text inside of Python. The first thing we're going to be talking about is dictionary. A dictionary works in a similar way like a list in that it stores values, but instead it stores values using key-value pairs. Keys are used to index the values. We use dictionaries because we can store different data types inside of them, not just strings and numerical values like list. But one great advantage of using dictionaries is the way in which data is stored. For example, say we have a class and you have learners, say for example 3 learners, and they wrote a test that was out of 50, and you would like to store the results in one data container. So you want to store the test scores and the names of the learners. The way in which you would do that, you would have 2 different lists. But we can solve this problem using a dictionary. So if you were to use list, you would simply have 2 lists, one with the test scores Now, we can clearly see that this is very inconvenient, especially if we want to index the list. If we want the names to correspond to the test scores, we will have to index both of the list. One way in which we can solve the problem is using a dictionary data container. And the way in which we would do that is very simple. First, we have to define our dictionary. So we define our dictionary by first initiating a variable. We're just going to call it dictionary here. And the first thing that we need to enter is the key. In our instance, the first key will be Sipho, which is the name of the first learner. And then after that, we need to put in a colon. And after a colon, we need to put in the value. And the corresponding value is 18. So this is what we talk about when we're talking about key value pair. This is a key and this is a value, and they match together. So let's go ahead and type the rest of the names. Okay, now that we are done typing our dictionary, let us see how we can index our dictionary. It's very simple. We're gonna first have to type our dictionary name. In our case, it's the same as dictionary. And then we're gonna put in square brackets. And then inside the square brackets, we need to put in the key that we want its value for. So in our instance, say for example, we want Sipho. And we want the value of Sipho. So let's go ahead and run our script. And it gives us the result 18. And we can do the same for the other learners as well. So let's try John. And it gives us 26, corresponding to the mark 26. So we can clearly see that we have compressed these two lists into one data container, and this is why we use dictionaries. Now, just like list, we can also change the values inside our dictionary, and the way in which we do that, we simply type in the name of our dictionary, and then inside we put in the key that we want to change its value for. Say for example we want to change the value for John to 46. Gonna type in the key for the key John, and then we're gonna type in the new value that we want to change it. So let's print out our new dictionary to see if it made the changes. And we can clearly see that the key John has been changed, its value has been changed to 46. We can also append our dictionary, and the way in which we do that, say for example we want to add another learner called Lerato. We do it in a similar way as if we want to change a value inside a key. But then with the dictionary is that if this key is not inside the dictionary, it will simply add it. If there was a Lerato inside our dictionary, then it was simply going to change the value for Lerato. But because there's no Lerato inside our dictionary, it's going to append the key and the value. So let's go ahead and run the script. We can clearly see that it has appended our dictionary with the key value pair, Lerato, and its value. So just like list, dictionaries have their own unique functions. So if we type in dictionary, and then we type in the period character, it'll give us a drop-down menu with all the possible functions available for us. I'm just going to show you a few. So let's start with values. Click on values, shift open bracket. So what this does, it will return a list with all the values inside our dictionary. So let's go ahead and run it. And this is the result. And it gives us all the values inside our dictionaries. Now if we would like to have the keys, we can type in keys, and it'll give us a list of all the keys inside our dictionary. Here is the list of all our keys, which are all our learners. And if we want the key value pairs, we can also type in items, and it'll give us all our key value pairs inside our dictionary. So this is how we use dictionaries inside of Python, and it is very convenient to use it, especially when working with list. So now another function that I would like to show you is the string function. It is a Python built-in module. So you've seen me most of the time typing a string by first defining a variable. So I use single quotation. Now for example I type in this, and we can clearly see it prints out the string. Another way in which we can define a string, we can simply say str, and you can see it will turn purple to indicate that it's a Python built-in function. And then if we shift open brackets and then we type in a value inside, then it will know that this is a string, and we can also print it. And it will print something similar. So you might be asking yourself, why do we use this string function instead of using this? Well, sometimes we want to make numerical values strings. For example, if I want to type Thandi is 6 years old, the way in which I would do that, first I have my variable as 6, and then here I'm going to type in my sentence, Thandi is yeah, I'm just gonna type in Thandi is this, and then here I'm gonna say string, and I want to add it together. I want to add the two variables together so that it reads Thandi is this age old. Okay, let's have another string here. So now I wanted to read Thandi is 6 years old, and if I just do this, let's see what will happen. It gives us an error because this is a string and this is an integer. So the way in which we solve the problem, we use the Python string function. So if we use this instead, then the 6, instead of becoming a numerical value, it will become a string. So this is why we use string of Python. So let's go ahead and try it now. We can clearly see it has printed out the 6 as a string value. So this is why we sometimes use the string value inside of Python. Now we're going to talk about strings. So the way in which we type strings inside of Python is that usually first we define a variable. So the first variable I'm going to define is example, and then I'm going to type in equals to, and then usually we use a single quotation mark or double quotation mark, and I'll tell you why we use either one of them. So the first one is that if we want to type in a simple string, as you've seen in my previous example, I use a single quotation mark. Okay, and then we can print this. See, we first start with the single quotation mark, and then we end with a single quotation mark, and that is how we define a text or a string inside of Python. Let us print it. Now, why do we use double quotation marks? Say for example, we can clearly see that there's an error here, there's a spelling error. So say for example, I wanted to write, this is my friend's dog. This is my friend's dog. I would have to use a single quotation mark here. And if I try doing that here to add a quotation mark here or inverted comma here, let's try and write it and see what will happen. It gives us a syntax error. Now, in order to solve the problem, we can simply add a double quotation mark at the beginning and at the end of our string value. So if we use a double quotation mark, it will be able to print the string value. So if we want to use a single quotation mark, we must use double quotation marks outside to indicate where the string ends and where the string starts. But sometimes we also want to use double quotation marks inside. Say for example, I want to say and I want to use double quotation mark to indicate what he said, the quotation here. Now let's try to run our script and see if it will be able to print. We can clearly see that it gives us a syntax error. So one way in which we can do that, and to solve many of the problems that we're going to encounter following this example, is by using what we call escape characters. And the way in which we define escape characters is by using a backlash instead of the character. So we use escape characters in cases where it is impossible to put any character or to define a character inside our string value. So I'm gonna put in a backlash here, and I'm also gonna put in a backlash here. So let's try to run our script again. We can clearly see now it printed our statement with the double quotation mark. And we can also use the escape character. Say for example, we want to add a space when we print, or we want to add a new line. So if we are typing our string like this and we try to run it, it's going to give us an error. So the way in which we can show it to space or to skip a line, we need to use an escape character. We put in a backlash, then we type in n. Then if we run our script, then it's gonna skip a line after this escape character, then it's gonna type in Z. So that's how we use escape characters inside of Python. Say for example, we want to include the backlash and n, but instead we don't want to skip a line. The way in which we can solve the problem is by using what we call a raw string. And to use a raw string is very simple. We need to put in an R before our text or our string value. So if we put in an R, we can type in any escape character, it will not have an effect on our string. So if we use a raw string, it prints out everything as it is inside our string or text value. So let's give it a try. We can clearly see it prints out everything, including the escape characters, without skipping a line. So if we can use a raw character if we want to put in any character inside our string value. Sometimes we want to type in sometimes we have this problem. Let me show you. We don't want to type in our string to be this long, and we want to use multiple lines. Now if we just click in enter and try to do this, then it will give us a syntax error. So one way to overcome this problem is by using 3 quotation marks. So if we use 3 single quotation, then we can write our string over multiple lines. Another thing that you need to note is that when we are typing a string, to indicate that it is a string or a comment, it's going to turn green to indicate that this is a string value. So if we run this, it'll give us this. So that's how we write a string over multiple lines. I'm sure in most of my code you've seen this code right here, but we've already talked about what is a comment and how do we include a comment inside of Python. But we didn't discuss this. So sometimes you also want to make a comment, and we said if you want to make a comment, you simply put a hashtag and then you type in a comment. Now Python will not execute this code and it will just simply overlook it. Now say for example you want your comment to run over multiple lines for the same reasons you want your string to run over multiple lines. One way to do that is to use triple double quotations. So you can clearly see that this is the same as the comments above. So if you want your comments to run over multiple lines, this is how you can do it inside of Python. Now, I am going to show you another way in which we can work with strings, how to index strings. So remember, if we want to define strings, we simply define a variable. Let's call it example. This is my string and I'm going to define it using single quotation. Now, say for example, I want to index the string value that is here. The easiest way to do it, just like in list, I need to put in the location of the character I want to index. For example, if I type in example, square brackets, then put in the location 0. Let's just print this. We can clearly see it has printed the character T. So this is how we locate or we index a string value. So now that we have printed T, we can also print the whole word this. And the way to do that, we have to use slicing. Now the way we use slicing, we put in the location where we wanted to start slicing. Say for example, we wanted to take values between 0 and 3. And that will be the location of the words. So let's go ahead and print it and see what will be the results. Okay, let's go to location 4. So if we run this code line 9, it's simply indexing the values between 0 and 4 location. Now we can clearly see this is for the 0 location, 1, 2, 3, and 4. So this is how we index values inside a string. If we just want this word and we know its location, we can simply use slicing, or we can even do this. Let's run our code. And it will still print it. However, if we do this, it's going to print out all the characters between 0 location up until the end. So this is how we index string values inside of Python. Another helpful operators using strings are the Boolean values. So say for example, we want to check if a word is inside of our string. We can simply use the in and not. The way in which we use the in and not operators, we simply need to type in the string is. So now I'm checking if the word is inside my string. We can clearly see it's returning to us a Boolean value true, meaning that the word is inside. Now let's check if it's case sensitive. So we can clearly see that it is case sensitive using the Boolean values. So this is how we use string values inside of Python, and this is how we work with them.